Waller County, Texas, 2023. Less than 2 weeks into the new year, a chilling 911 call shattered the quiet of a small rural town. A frantic voice trembled on the line. Waller County 911, what's your emergency? My name is Rodney. I need the police. What's going on, sir? I don't know everything, but my son's wife, she's dead. The dispatcher tried to steady the caller. But then came the words that made the blood drain from their face, she's down, and there's no head on her body. This wasn't just a murder. This was something far more disturbing. Jared James Diaz and Angie Diaz were both just 21. They had tied the knot in October 2022, glowing with happiness, their smiles captured in photos that told the world of a love full of promise. But just 3 months later, that promise lay shattered, along with Angie's lifeless body. On the afternoon of January 11, 2023, Jared's parents, Rodney and Linda Diaz, walked across their property to check on their son's young wife. What they found inside the couple's home was beyond comprehension. The scene was pure horror. Angie lay on the floor, brutally murdered, her body desecrated in a way too gruesome to imagine. As the stunned parents staggered back in terror, they reached for their phone and dialed for help. The police rushed to the scene, but as they stepped through the doorway, one thing became terrifyingly clear: this wasn't a random crime. Jared and Angie's short-lived marriage had ended in murder, and it was Jared's own parents who uncovered the gruesome truth. How did this love story spiral into something so monstrous? What had gone so catastrophically wrong? And most importantly, was Jared responsible? As investigators pieced together the events leading up to Angie's tragic death, shocking new evidence emerged, evidence that would paint a picture no one was ready for. Surveillance footage revealed Jared's movements on that fateful day. Meanwhile, Angie's devastated family mourned the unimaginable loss of a bright, caring young woman whose radiant smile once lit up every room she entered. Her loved ones gathered, struggling to process the horror. At the center of their vigil sat Angie's bicycle, the same one she rode every single day to the meat market where she worked. A heartbreaking symbol of the life that was so cruelly stolen. Her mother's voice trembled as she spoke. This is the worst thing that could ever happen to a mother, it has shattered my soul. Magnolia, Texas, a small, peaceful town known for its towering magnolia trees, had never seen a crime like this. Located just 45 miles northwest of Houston, it had once been a place where people felt safe. But not anymore. When Rodney and Linda Diaz made that 911 call, they had no idea their family would soon be at the center of a horrific crime that would shake the entire community. Police officers, familiar with the Diaz family, had responded to their property before. But nothing could have prepared them for what they saw when they arrived at the couple's small home. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to subscribe for more true crime content, like this video to support the channel. One officer described the moment he stepped inside. The front door was wide open. I could see into the house. A towel on the floor, a pair of pink socks, and then, what he saw next would haunt him forever. As the first responders stepped closer, an eerie stillness hung in the air. The front door creaked as it swung open, revealing a dimly lit room that reeked of iron and cigarette smoke. One paramedic hesitated at the doorway, scanning the scene before stepping inside. As I began to step up the steps, I could see underneath the towel, it looked like blood. The other responders remained cautious. They had no idea what they were walking into. Suicide? A brutal attack? Something else entirely? They couldn't risk contaminating a crime scene without knowing what had happened. As I stepped inside, I noticed a desk immediately to my right. There was a computer on it. But my eyes were drawn past it, to something else. His breath caught in his throat. Just beyond the desk, barely visible in the dim light, were a pair of feet, motionless. He took another step forward. And then, the nightmare revealed itself. Her body lay sprawled on the floor, drenched in blood. But something was horribly, horribly wrong. There was no head, the paramedic recalled, his voice shaking. This wasn't a patient. This was a crime scene. The first responders backed away, their training kicking in. This was beyond their scope. Now, it was up to the police. Within minutes, officers flooded the small house, their boots sticking to the blood-soaked floor. The scene before them was nothing short of gruesome. She was decapitated. Stab wounds all over her back. Her head's in the bathtub. Blood spattered the walls. The floor was littered with cigarette butts and discarded, blood-stained clothes. Near Angie's body, a knife lay on the ground, its blade darkened with dried blood. The officers followed a trail of bloody footprints, leading them toward the bathroom. And that's when they saw it. Angie's severed head sat in the bathtub, a horrifying testament to the brutality of the crime. But the most chilling part? Jared Diaz, her husband, was standing right there, watching as the officers processed the scene. He wasn't crying. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't even trying to run. He just stood there. The officers wasted no time. They grabbed Jared, restraining him before he could make a move. At this point, there was no question, he was involved. Whether he had done it or knew who did, he wasn't innocent. According to his mother, Jared had confessed, at least partially. He told me, "It happened this morning," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. And then she added something else. "He's been acting really strange lately." Strange behavior didn't necessarily mean murder. But in a case like this, it was more than enough reason for suspicion. The police turned to Jared's brother, Wayne, for more insight. "Wayne, can we talk for a second?" an officer asked, pulling him aside. Wayne shifted uncomfortably. "What do you know about Angie?" Wayne hesitated. Not much, really." "What was her last name before she and your brother got married?" Wayne stared at the officer blankly. "I don't know." "What about her date of birth?" "I don't know." "How long had she been working at the meat market?" "I think that's where they met." Wayne's answers were vague. Either he genuinely knew little about Angie, or he was trying to distance himself from the situation. Then, something unexpected slipped out. "I know she's not really a legal citizen," Wayne muttered. "I mean, I don't care." She was family. The officers exchanged glances. It wasn't relevant to the murder itself, but it gave them a sense of how Angie was perceived within the Diaz family. They turned back to Jared's mother, who was growing visibly anxious. "Are we all suspects now?" she asked, her voice sharp with fear. "No, ma'am," one of the officers reassured her. "This is just standard procedure." But it didn't feel standard to them. Outside, news of the crime was already spreading. People had begun gathering near the property, whispering, speculating. "We just don't want anything getting out before we can conduct a proper investigation," the officer added. The truth was, they didn't need to worry about anyone else. Because from the moment they stepped inside that house, they already knew. Jared wasn't just a suspect. He was the answer. Jared sat in the back of the police cruiser, his hands cuffed tightly behind him. The cold metal pressed against his wrists, but he barely seemed to notice. His eyes were vacant, his expression eerily calm. The officer who approached him wasn't a stranger. He had known Jared and his family for years. This wasn't how he ever imagined speaking to the young man, especially not like this. "Jared, would you mind giving me the passcode to your phone?" Jared blinked, as if he barely processed the question. "It's a 6-digit code," the officer added. There was no fight, no resistance. Jared simply mumbled the numbers, his voice barely above a whisper. For now, they needed procedural details, Angie's date of birth, official identification for her body. But even the most seasoned officers, the ones who had dealt with horrific crimes before, were still trying to process the carnage they had just witnessed. One officer muttered under his breath. When I heard possible DOA at 206 Oatmeal Boulevard, I thought it was Wayne. Figured he OD'd or something. Wayne, Jared's older brother, had a well-known history of drug abuse, particularly meth. His run-ins with law enforcement stretched back years, starting in 2018 when he was just 20. He had been reckless, self-destructive, unpredictable. If anything tragic ever happened on the Diaz property, everyone assumed Wayne would be involved. But it wasn't Wayne sitting in the back of the cruiser. It was Jared. Jared, the quiet, responsible one. The younger brother who had always seemed to have his life together. The one who held a steady job, played high school football, and, by all accounts, had a bright future ahead of him. Even when Wayne's drug use caused friction in the family, Jared had tried to be the reasonable one. He had even called the police once when Wayne stole copper wire from him. But later, he regretted it. He had only wanted to help his brother, not get him into trouble. Now, it was Jared who had been arrested. Not for stealing, not for drugs. For murder. And not just any murder. The brutal killing of his own wife. But who was Angie Diaz, the young woman whose life had been taken in such a horrifying way? To understand the depths of this tragedy, you first had to understand her story. Angie was born in October 2001 in Nicaragua. Life was not easy for her from the start. Her biological mother was a single parent, struggling to raise Angie and her siblings on her own. She worked tirelessly, often taking jobs in Costa Rica just to send money back home. But this meant she was frequently away, leaving Angie and her siblings in the care of their aunt. I arrived, well, we came back from Costa Rica every few months to see our children, Angie's mother would later explain. We worked, and then we went back again. It was a sacrifice, a painful one. But Angie understood. She inherited that same relentless drive from her mother. From a young age, Angie was ambitious. She excelled academically, studying accounting at the National Autonomous University of Nicaragua at Leon while living with her adoptive mother, her aunt, who had essentially raised her. But tragedy struck when Angie was 18. Her aunt, the woman who had been like a mother to her, was diagnosed with cancer. The weight of the world fell onto Angie's shoulders. Her biological mother, now in the United States, scraped together the money to bring Angie and her brothers across the Mexican border. They entered Texas as undocumented immigrants, hoping for a better future. Angie wasted no time. She immediately found work, taking a job as a cashier at Chaps Meat Market while also using social media to promote herself as a personal trainer. She didn't just want to survive, she wanted to build a life for herself, for her family. She was determined. Focused. Hungry for success. Her social media posts reflected her mindset: celebrate your own victories because no one else understands what it took for you to achieve them. But not everyone understood her ambition. Angie's mother, despite working hard to bring her children to the US, worried about her daughter's drive. I was living in an apartment with them, the same place I've always lived, her mother recalled. I went to pick her up, that's where they handed her over to me. Even though they had finally been reunited, something gnawed at her. What worried me the most was that she came with dreams, she admitted. She immediately wanted to work. She wanted us to start working right away, to pay things off, to handle everything. Her mother tried to tell her to slow down. Have patience, she had urged. God will provide work. You don't have to do everything at once. But Angie didn't want to wait. She had seen hardship her entire life. She knew that if she didn't work for what she wanted, no one else would hand it to her. She was young. She was full of hope. And then, one day, in 2022, she met Jared. A chance encounter at the meat market where she worked. A conversation that turned into something more. A whirlwind romance that ended in a wedding just months later. At first, it seemed like a love story. But within 3 months, that love story turned into a nightmare. And now, Angie's body lay lifeless in the home she had shared with the man who was supposed to protect her. The man who was now sitting in the back of a police car. Silent. Expressionless. As if none of it had ever mattered. How did Jared Diaz go from a seemingly normal young man to an accused murderer? Was there something lurking beneath the surface that no one saw? Or was the warning sign always there, hidden in plain sight? One thing was certain, the answers lay in the brutal crime scene behind them. And as the investigation continued, the truth about what really happened that night would shake everyone to their core. At first, it seemed like a love story straight out of a fairy tale. Angie Diaz, the ambitious, hardworking young woman who had overcome so many struggles in life, had finally met someone who made her feel special. Jared Diaz, the former high school football player with the all-American charm, swept her off her feet. Their relationship played out like a dream on social media, roses, sweet messages, and pictures of them beaming together. But behind the perfect Instagram posts, something much darker was brewing. Angie had always been a planner. She wasn't the type to jump into anything blindly. Yet, when it came to Jared, everything moved at lightning speed. They met in early 2022, just as she had ended a long-term relationship with a man named Jose. Jose had been her future, until he wasn't. Angie's friends were surprised when she suddenly broke off her engagement to him. They had been planning to marry in the US, and everything seemed set in stone. But out of nowhere, she changed her mind. Everything was fine, but then she told me she wasn't going to get married anymore, one friend recalled. When asked why, Angie's response was simple: he changed. He became distant. He wasn't paying attention to me. Angie's friend, older and more experienced in relationships, had warned her not to settle for someone who made her feel neglected. If you don't feel good with him now, why marry him, she had advised. Maybe it was just coincidence that Angie met Jared around this same time. Maybe it was fate. Or maybe, deep down, Angie was looking for something else. Something new, something exciting, something that felt like an escape from everything she had known before. Jared was different from Jose in every way. He was charming, confident, athletic, the kind of guy who would have been the star of any high school movie. And he knew how to make Angie feel special. From the moment they met, Jared went out of his way to show Angie affection. He brought her roses at work. Small gifts, little surprises, gestures that made her feel like she was the center of his world. She shared everything with her best friend. He was really sweet to her, the friend said. She showed me a picture of the flowers he brought her, and I thought, oh, how sweet. When Angie announced she was marrying Jared, the friend was shocked. She had expected her to take things slowly, to wait, to be sure. But it was already done. By October 2022, around Angie's 21st birthday, she and Jared were husband and wife. But something didn't add up. Angie had always been close with her family. She had crossed borders to be with them. She had worked tirelessly to send money home. Yet, when she got married, she didn't even tell her mother. Her mother only found out later. Why? Why would a daughter who had sacrificed so much to be with her family keep something so important from them? Some believed she wanted a fresh start. Others thought she was afraid of judgment. Her mother had never been fully supportive of her ambitions, after all. But there was another theory. Some suspected that Angie and Jared's wedding wasn't just about love. A few months into their relationship, Angie had an accident. No one knows exactly what happened, but whatever it was, it triggered something bigger. Suddenly, Angie was at risk of deportation. And just like that, the wedding happened. One of her friends later recalled the conversation. I told her they should take their time, really get to know each other before making such a big decision, she said. But she said they had to do it. Was it because of love? Or was it desperation? Angie had fought so hard to get to the US. She had left everything behind to build a life here. Losing that life? That wasn't an option. And so, she married Jared. Maybe she thought it would be the beginning of something beautiful. Maybe she thought it was just a way to secure her future. But what Angie didn't know was that her future had already been written in blood. At first, things between Angie and Jared seemed happy. They moved in together, played the role of a young, newlywed couple. But cracks soon began to show. Jared, once the sweet and doting boyfriend, started to change. There were arguments, small at first, but they grew more intense. Angie confided in friends that things weren't as perfect as they appeared. But she stayed. She was strong. She believed in fighting for what she wanted. She had already left behind one man who had grown distant. She wouldn't do it again. But what she didn't realize was that Jared wasn't just distant. There was something else lurking beneath his quiet demeanor. Something dangerous. On the night of January 11, 2023, something inside Jared snapped. Maybe it was building for a long time. Maybe it was sudden. But whatever it was, the outcome was the same. By the time the paramedics arrived at their home, it was already too late. Angie's body lay on the floor, her head nowhere to be seen. Jared, standing there covered in blood, barely reacted as he was taken into custody. And when the cops walked through the house, following the trail of bloody footprints, they found what they never wanted to see. Angie's severed head. Lying in the bathtub. Jared didn't run. He didn't fight. He just sat there. As if none of it mattered. What had pushed Jared to this point? Had he always been this way, hiding his true self behind a mask? Or was there something deeper, a pressure, an anger, an obsession that finally exploded? And the biggest question of all, did Angie ever see it coming? Or did she believe, up until the very last moment, that love would save her? One thing was certain. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was something far, far darker. And as the investigation unfolded, the truth about Jared Diaz would shake everyone to their core. At first, Angie Diaz's marriage to Jared Diaz seemed like a whirlwind romance, the kind of love story people dream about. The charming former football player, the hardworking and ambitious young woman, together, they painted a picture of happiness. But behind the smiles, behind the carefully curated social media posts, something was terribly wrong. And by the time people started noticing, it was already too late. Angie had worked too hard to build a life in the US to just let it slip away. She had friends, a job, and a future. She had left everything behind in Honduras to chase a dream. But then came the accident. Something happened that put her legal status at risk, and suddenly, staying in the US wasn't just about wanting a better life, it was about survival. Jared seemed like the perfect answer. A US citizen. A provider. A partner who could make sure she stayed. Her uncle, however, saw the warning signs. I just told her, don't do it for the documents. Don't marry him just because you need to stay. If you're going to do it for love. Angie insisted. I love him. And he loves me. Her uncle wasn't convinced. But, like everyone else, he wanted to believe she was happy. So, he agreed to be a witness. And just like that, Angie Diaz became Angie Diaz. But there was one thing Angie hadn't done. She never told her mother. Despite all the sacrifices she had made to be with her family in the US, she kept her wedding a secret. Maybe she thought her mother wouldn't approve. Maybe she knew, deep down, that this wasn't the fairy tale she was pretending it was. Or maybe, just maybe, she was afraid. Afraid that once she said it out loud, once she admitted that things weren't perfect, she would have to face the truth. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to subscribe for more true crime content, like this video to support the channel. Angie had always been full of life. Her friends adored her. She had a tight-knit group, all of whom spoke Spanish, and she loved to be surrounded by them. But when she introduced Jared to them, something felt off. He would just sit there, looking frustrated. He didn't understand Spanish, and you could see he was irritated about it. They nicknamed him Rojo, Spanish for red, because of his hair. He didn't like it. He didn't like the language barrier. He didn't like feeling like an outsider. And slowly, Angie started pulling away from her friends. It wasn't just her friends who noticed the change. Her boss, Ruth, saw it too. Before the wedding, Angie had been lively, always smiling, always chatting with customers at the meat market. But after she got married, it was like a switch had flipped. She wasn't the same anymore. She was quieter, more withdrawn. And Jared, he was always there, watching. He would come to the counter constantly, checking on her. She no longer seemed like a newlywed basking in happiness. She seemed nervous. And then, on January 10th, the day before everything fell apart, Angie showed up to work with a bruise on her shoulder. That Tuesday, her coworkers saw it, the dark mark on her skin. "What happened?" they asked. Angie hesitated, then told them the truth. "I'm leaving him. I can't do this anymore. I'll never get married again." Her friends were stunned. Was it really that bad? Angie didn't just nod, she pulled up her shirt slightly, revealing more bruises. She had been arguing with Jared the night before. And then, he hit her. She had been in the shower when it happened. And why? Because she had gone out with her aunt on Sunday, and Jared hadn't wanted her to. That's all it took. He wanted to control her. And when she refused, he lashed out. But now, she was done. She was going to leave. Her coworkers made plans to meet up with her on Friday. They would sit down, talk it through. Maybe help her find a way out. But they never got the chance. That night, Angie went home to the man she had just decided to leave. Did she tell him? Did she gather the courage to say the words out loud? Or did he already sense it? By that point, Jared was unraveling. Friends had noticed his behavior becoming more erratic in the months leading up to 2023. He was drinking more. He was growing more controlling. And that night, the night of January 10th, it all came to a head. The argument began again. Maybe she told him she was leaving. Maybe he saw it in her eyes. Maybe he realized that the only way to keep her was to make sure she never left. By the time the sun rose on January 11th, Angie was gone. Her body lay on the floor. Her head, her beautiful, smiling, loving face, was nowhere to be seen. Jared had severed it from her body. And placed it in the bathtub. Jared didn't run. He didn't try to hide. When the police arrived, he was covered in her blood, standing in their home like nothing had happened. The officers followed the trail of blood, their footsteps leading them to the bathroom. That's when they saw it. Angie's head. And suddenly, all the pieces came together. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't an accident. This was the end of a story that had been unraveling from the moment Angie said, "I do." How long had Jared been capable of this? Was this always inside him, hidden beneath the charm? Or did something change? More importantly, did Angie ever truly see the danger she was in? Or did she believe, up until the very last second, that she could still get out? One thing is certain. This wasn't love. This was possession. This was control. And for Angie Diaz, it was a death sentence. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to subscribe for more true crime content, like this video to support the channel, and comment your thoughts below. What do you think really happened? Let's discuss.